Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Laura Jane Mellencamp-Murphy is the founder and has been the owner of Yoga Among Friends in downtown Downers Grove since 1998. Prior to moving to the Midwest, Laura Jane received her master's in clinical psychology and was a marriage-family therapist in Los Angeles, California. After moving to Downers Grove, she has been practicing therapy using the tools of yoga. Laura Jane has been changing people's lives as an accredited yoga therapist and yoga teacher by offering a complete range of yoga classes as well as one-on-one yoga therapy sessions. So Laura, welcome. It's a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me be a part of this today. How lovely. Thank you.
I was hoping you could start us off by letting us know a little bit about how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Well, I got in because of my own life journey. I guess everybody sometimes never knows how they are welcomed into their true path. But I've always felt a love for healing. I came into this world as a diacebestrol daughter. I don't know if you've ever heard of DES. My mother took the drug in the 50s by E. Lilly, and it was a condition that the children unfortunately had genetic alterations. So I had massive female problems all through my teenage years, was put on harsh drugs that even made me more crazy. And I knew at some point that I had to heal, and somehow divine intervention brought me into yoga. Now, this is in the late 70s, early 80s, ahead of the time of what yoga. I was always been interested in the manic arts, the subtle energies, a seeker. I was always a seeker, seeking health, seeking something in life other than this formula of identity. Questioning. And so somehow life became a journey. I ended up from New York City, walking into the New York Health and Racket Club. I was an actress, decided I needed a job because I got fired at any other job, and was hired at the New York Health and Racket Club in the late 70s as a calisthenics teacher, teaching Nautilus. Had no idea what it was. They asked me, "Excuse me, do you teach yoga?" And I said, well, yes, I teach yoga. I got a book and I taught yoga. And a doctor one day came into my class and he said, that was the best back care I've ever had. I thought he was going to bust me, that I was going to be found out as a fraud. But he said, have you ever thought of teaching privates? I have very wealthy clients on the Upper East Side of New York. I would love to be able to refer you. You go to their homes. And this is before private trainers. This is before any of this world was licensed. And I would go and I would give them, stretching and things that I had created for my own health. Everything comes out of your own experiences. And they would say, Laura, can you just touch me again? Oh my God, touch me. That felt so good. And I went, oh my gosh, the power of touch, because the mind needed somatic experience. And I knew that I needed touch. My mother would rub my back. I was very high anxiety through all of these medications, and I would just get calm. So I ended up getting a massage license. I went back to, I said, I better learn how to study this yoga. Got trained. But, I never wanted the job. I pushed it away because in my mind, I was going to be this rich and famous actress. And this was only my patrons, and they were helping me as my gig. I've always been a gig player. I have never had a corporate job, never worked for anyone but myself. Well, eventually I moved to Los Angeles, and it followed me. I would go into a yoga class and a teacher would come up to me and goes, how did you like the class? And I'd say, lovely, but I can't afford $10. He said, I'm going to offer you a scholarship. I said, what? He said, you're going to bring people to yoga. And I was like, who are you people? I'm not going to bring people to yoga. My ego would not hear it. Well, at 34, 35, I crashed. I got on the floor. I was so miserable. I hated myself, self-loathing, because my identity was so enmeshed in what I was going to achieve. I was angry at the world. I wanted to be powerful. So the power and the misuse of my mind, I was jealous of everybody at auditions. I was envious. If I got the job, I was still nervous that I had to keep the job. I wasn't good enough. All of this accumulated self-loathing. On the floor one day, I prayed, asked, and this is a moment where I know there's no doubt in something greater. I heard yoga retreat. Yoga retreat. Now this is in the late 80s, and I'm thinking, yoga retreat? What is an ashram? The next day I'm in Los Angeles, I pick up a reader, one of these Los Angeles papers, black and white, little ad, opened it up. It said yoga retreat. It was in Santa Barbara. To this day, it is a turning point in my life. I went on that yoga retreat. Now, this is the magic story. I called up, I said, I'm going to come. And how much is it? Well, it's $600 for the 4 days. I was like, what? This is insane. But no matter what, I was going to go. 3 days before the retreat, I get a call from the retreat from Ganga. He said, Laura, I advertised for the first time. We've never done a yoga retreat ever. We advertised from Seattle, all the way to San Diego. You're the only one that signed up. I want to offer you a week here. I will teach private. We'll have a vegetarian cook. If you just don't mind, you'll be alone in the evenings because we won't be here and there won't be anybody else, but I can offer it to you for $350. I hung up the phone. And in that moment, I knew this is my path. From that day on, I have never stopped teaching yoga. That was in 1989. It brought me to graduate school to get a master's in clinical psychology. In the 90s, I wanted to introduce, because it started to heal me on such a level of consciousness that I surrendered. I became accepting of something greater. That was a powerful tool to have faith. Yoga is something that brings you into something greater, your Purusha, your soul. The little mind floats. It has identity. It has attachments. It has obstacles according to those belief systems, your patterning, your samskaras, your behaviors. It is not you. So I couldn't stand and keep attacking myself, bad girl, bad girl. And I surrendered into this path. And to this day, I'm a yoga therapist. And I will swear it's the gift to be able to touch, to be able to rock somebody, to cry with somebody, and not be afraid of the heroic journey to fall apart. So I don't fix people. I just allow them safety and holding. And I have found these tools to be profound. And thank God, after I left mental health, because it wouldn't let me touch and it wouldn't let me rock and be available on the somatic, because of pharma coming in the mental health system, getting so much involved in that. And even today, I work with so many people being over-medicated. So this is my life work of yoga therapy. And the beauty is that people are starting to wake up to it. It's not such a fringe thing. Unfortunately, yoga has a little confusing states now of being a fitness industry. At one time, it was a cult for religious crazy. But all I know is that I'm here today and grateful that you're asking the question about how I got in. Thank you.
Well, so the current structure of your business, I mean, if I go to the website, give us the website again.
It's www.yoga Among Friends. I have a studio for 25 years. And
you've got a whole boatload of instructors there. I've scrolled down and read their, little, but there's more than 15, right? There
it comes and goes, people. Yes.
And so is the entire focus of everyone who works at your studio the same kind of mental health, whole body?
My premise is the teachings of Krishnamacharya, which comes from the lineage that yoga therapy was really developed because it's breath oriented. Everything is breath oriented. The mind is linked to the breath. It's your greatest subtle channel to bring you consciously into your home, inward, into your physical experience. So every teacher is well versed in breath, but yoga therapy is a one-on-one experience. Now, everybody doesn't wear the same shoes. So we don't teach yoga with the idea that everybody can do the same poses or the same practice. Yoga therapy is designed individually for the person. And there's different goals. There's different reasons for everyone to come in. They can come in with a backache and end up, the cause of it could be something totally different than lifting up the suitcase. So that's it. That's different. The studio itself offers classes, but every teacher is well versed in the understanding of meeting a student where they are. So we have a lot of trauma-based classes that are very much geared for just a small group of people to come in as a workshop.
Let
and
me
let
me interrupt you so I can follow this. Trauma what classes?
Trauma informed.
Trauma informed. Okay.
And then we have other teachers that are yoga therapists, but teach a group class with breath orienting to bring them into a quality. And the quality is ease. We want the mind to be stable and alert. So there's an intention addressed to what the actual experience we want to create. We're not here to do headstands or to create a driven desire for the physical body to be achieving a certain form. We want the form to serve the function of the experience. So it's function over form, which is the premise of yoga therapy. In the Western culture and all over the world, yoga became form driven. A lot of it, the structure of it, became more important than the understanding of why we're practicing. But the beauty of coming into yoga, whatever it is, whether it's hot yoga or power yoga, for those that continue, it's because they're seeking something different. They actually experience something that shifts the mind. So, we don't have hot yoga, but we do have Iyengar, which is very structural, very much, a form to create a sense of stability for the mind.
So you're using the term yoga therapy instead of just a yoga class.
Yes, and there's a big difference. And
that's what I'd like to have you just explain a little bit for our listeners, the difference between a yoga class and yoga therapy.
Yes. If a doctor recommends for a patient, go to yoga, it can be a dangerous thing, because remember, if I hold a knife and I hand you the knife in the wrong way, it can cut you. And if I don't use the tool appropriately, it can harm. So all yoga comes from the premise, is it healing or is it harming? Yoga therapy is all healing yoga. And it comes from teachers that have been well trained. It's not an easy path. I went back to India. I've trained months at a time. Took me 6 years to become a yoga therapy with all of the training and all of the time involved. It's a lot of hours and many hours of working with people in a way, just like I would be interning and doing work with my master's degree. I had to, take jobs for a long time and get practice, seeing clients, being with people in my internship. It's the same with yoga therapy. It's like 2 years of internship. And a yoga therapist is trained to assess a client. Now, we are not mental health providers, so we may work with mental health. We got to stay in our lane. We're not even, many people, this is where the important thing, but we have tools to give people out of our toolbox to help in the healing process. Remember, posture is one tool. When many people think of yoga, they think of an asana or the postures. That's one tool. It's like saying, I do rake. I do yoga and they hold up a rake. That's what I hear. It's like you do one tool. So we have asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These are just the understanding of those tools. Dharana is focusing the mind. Dhyana, meditation. Samadhi is not bliss, or it's the absorption of being steady in the mind. But we go from gross to subtle. Remember, people come to me and they say, I want to meditate. And I'm thinking, well, okay, lovely. Do you breathe? No, I don't breathe. It becomes this awareness that we're not fit to actually still the mind. And people want the quick result, but a yoga therapist will take you through a progression of a practice to help you bring yourself deeper and deeper into refinement of the mind. And that's usually the best gift we have is breath, pranayama. So all of this, and then the yamas and the niyamas, but that's the history. We study the philosophies, the tools are also in the sutras. But that's a lot of homework that your client never knows. They never know the work that goes into this.
And so when someone comes to you and they want to start yoga therapy, what's the length of a session? How frequent is it?
Oh, some people see me once a week for years, as a relationship, what they would like a mental health provider. Other people come in once a month. It depends on where they are, or people come into my life for years and they'll regroup every 6 months with me. I mentor a lot of students. The premise is you come in, you set up a session for at least 3 sessions. So we come in for 3 sessions. The first session, we do assessment. And that's usually about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe over, because, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of relationship development. Remember, a yoga therapist, the most important thing I can establish is a relationship. It's a heart-to-heart relationship. I have to meet you where you are, and there has to be a sense of trust. Remember, all life, in order to grow, you have to feel safe at some point to trust. So that's the first session. Then I design a practice for you, individual practice. And I create that practice. And on the second session, we go over the practice. The first session, I give you some breathing. I sit with you. I assess the body. I look to see what's going on structurally and what our goals have to be. The third session, to check your practice, to see what's happening. Now, remember, this is a self-empowering, and it takes your willingness to practice it. I don't shame you or punish you for not practicing, because I will tell you, the mind is tricky and it doesn't practice. It says, I couldn't fit it in. I was trying to, and I realized, and then we realize how we distract, how the mind is so tricky to find its distraction and noise. And that's our obstacle. So we learn to find ways to create time and space to come inward. And that's why a lot of people like their weekly visit, because it's a set time, a set place to be nurtured and to do the practice and to experience it, so that there's a desire to continue it. You have to have a little feel good in order to do this. And so at least 3, and many people, it goes on, they just say, can I continue more? And I say, of course, there's no limit here. It's a financial, there's no insurance. Now, many times we would love it, but then again, I don't want to work with insurance. I prefer that I do more a sliding scale and work with where people are than to have to go through the insurance, because I have worked in other corporations where they would pay it through the insurance, and they would limit you to 4 sessions or 5 and do assessments, and they would want to see the results. And I have to tell you, growth on these deeper levels, you can't register in the same way. It's humanity.
Right.
We're not robots.
Right. They have yet to develop the measuring devices for that.
Yeah. And for me, that possibility to be inspired for your life, you have a mentor, you have a teacher, you have somebody that sees and witnesses you before your witness sees you. To me, it's soul work. I can say we have a mental health crisis, we have a physical crisis, health crisis. No, we have a soul crisis. And I've always been involved in that work. I want humanity. I want kindness. And these are the teachings of yoga. Be kind to ourselves when we don't even know our self-talk is so dangerous.
Yeah, that's the most powerful book about that I ever got into was The Untethered Soul from Michael Singer, where he talks
he's lovely. Michael
so clearly about how we have this voice in our head that talks to us so brutally that we wouldn't allow anyone else to talk to us that way.
No. And that's where I was in my 30s. And when I fell and I found this path, I tried Buddhism, I would try prayer, but you see, at that point, it's so refined that it doesn't work. I would still say, well, I'm doing this, but why do I still hate myself? Because I couldn't stop that mind. But when I was able to witness the thought like a cloud, just like traffic noise, and go, that is not me. That is learned. I learned that. I learned to lie. Oh my God, I was only trying to protect myself. Oh my God, Laura, you were doing this to self-preservation. And that's where the mind goes. You see, your identity, all of us is rooted in self-preservation, because that's our nature, because we're a body. We're limited. We're afraid of death. It's all part of the mind. It's there to protect.
And what's been trained into the mind. Yeah.
Yes. And the mind then protects. But guess what it does? It suffocates you. It keeps you locked in a pattern of belief that you can't. And my life is no, can. We can move forward. We can move in a direction that's greater than that little mind. But in order to do that, you can't do it through the ego of, well, I'll accomplish 7 tasks in 6 days and I'll check it off my to-do list. That fed the wrong mind. We were slave drivers. And we make the slaves outside. No, it's in here. We're our own worst slave driver. So the grace is so subtle. And yet, how do we live in this world? Well, we do it day by day with patience and breath and acceptance and forgiveness. And that was my gateway. So when I would read about Christianity and, of course, Jesus, and a great teacher, I couldn't understand forgiveness. What does that mean? It was when I felt it, when I realized, Laura, you learn those patterns. Oh my God, you abandon yourself. Forgive yourself. You learn them. You read the wrong book. You're a really good learner. You're an amazing learner. You just got the wrong information. It's here. Forgive yourself. It is not that. And then the teachings, forgive them for they see not, for they know not. That's so true. We see wrong. And that's the whole teachings of yoga. My lens, my view of the world was learned. It's a pattern. It's colored. You know, if I pour water into a rose-colored glass, it's going to look rosy colored. Pour it into a clear glass. Did the water change? No, the glass changed. The lens. And that's my work. I clear your lens. I take a windshield and I wipe it off. And the tools do this. I don't do it personally. I'm not responsible for anyone's healing. It's the tools. I just teach the tools with reverence and humility. And I've been doing it since I was, 67 now? I've been doing it since I was in my late 20s. And every day, whatever, I'm still teaching because it's in my soul. And guess who I teach the most? Me.
Benefits the most, yeah.
I'm the humble recipient of my own words.
Well, that is the wisdom from the quote, we teach best that which we most need to learn.
Mm-hmm. It's my dharma. It's my path. Mm-hmm.
So aside from teaching and teaching I'm assuming that you teach others how to do the yoga therapy. Yes. And
I teach yoga therapy. I teach yoga teachers. I teach a 200-hour yoga teaching training. Zoom was my hardest endeavor for the last 2 years because I kept my studio alive by doing hybrid. We went totally on Zoom during the COVID. I wasn't technically inspired, but we do everything, whether it's on Zoom or in the classroom now. My best gift is really holding space. I'm actually, holding that yoga studio. And now I'm passing the baton a little, trying to get other people to do more yoga therapy and bring in more. We actually want to bring in psychologists that will actually be on site and have the space, because I have rooms. We have a big studio and then we have 2 other offset rooms. One, we want a full-time therapist to then work with us in conjunction with our yoga therapy. Yeah, so we're moving in that direction.
Wonderful. Where are you going to get the psychologists? And how are they going to be trained?
Can I tell you? Yoga teachers, I train them. They're in my class now. They're taking my yoga therapy. I train them with yoga and they start to understand how powerful this is. And a lot of therapists are coming into yoga because of all the somatic work. Somatic work became, the 70s, it was big, the 80s, and of course, then pharma in the 90s when I was in graduate school. So people are finally coming back to recognize we need other alternative ways. Jumper cables are great. I'm not saying anything negative about pharma in that regard. I truly believe when somebody's car stops, you need jumper cables. But do we run on jumper cables? No. You need to have prana. You need to have your breath. You need to have your life force. You need to have hope. You need to have the light on. And so most psychologists are coming into yoga. They want these tools of breathing. They want to be able to be well-versed in dialogue about these different kinds of understanding of words and teachings. So I do have psychologists that are interested in actually coming on board.
Wonderful.
And hopefully, look, I have PT people in my yoga training. They want more of the breath work. I think people don't realize that after COVID, the one thing that they learned, that if you took somebody and turned them onto their belly in prone position, that the lungs got expand in the back, and they realized that the breath was easier. We've known this for thousands and thousands of years. We know so much of where the mind has to place the breathing, how people do not know diaphragmic breathing. They do not. They breathe up here. Even if you tell people to exhale, and you exhale only through the mouth or do this cooling thing, it still dries out the system because there's no moisture after a while in the mouth. We know that inflammation is so prevalent today. Why? Because we're too dry. We don't have enough moisture. Look at runners, panting breath. We know that just stimulates anxiety to the system. And then people abuse their bodies in ways that is so harming. So we're really looking at, is it healing or is it harming? That is the question every day that you should ask yourself. Is this action healing or harming? Is this thought healing or harming? And is my speech healing or harming? Remember, it's thought, speech, and action. Those are the three always where the mind has to follow. So people aren't even conscious of that. They're too distracted. So we're learning diaphragmic breathing. If I can do 10 minutes of diaphragmic breathing, I can change your life. I can change your life.
I believe it. I've seen it in my own patients. I've had one rather startling example was a man in his late 50s who came in and had anxiety, and I taught him a breath technique that would just slow exhale and hold it at the top a little bit. He came back 2 weeks later furious at his physician because when he went into his physician sent him home with a bottle of pills. And he reached in his pocket and he pulled out these 2 pills he'd had in his Kleenex. He said, I've carried these around for the past 2 weeks. I haven't used a single one. Why didn't my physician just teach me to breathe differently? Now, that's not that magic cure for everybody, but it is a powerful tool for everybody.
It's a powerful tool. And what's wrong with our system is it's isolated. Mental health is over here. Physical health. No, merge them together. The mind is in the body. And not only that, but the mind has to be in here. It has to feel, not feel your thoughts, not feel your emotions. This is what people are afraid of. Feel the experience of being present to being here. Be consciously in the now. Remember, yoga is a living experience. It's in the moment. It's in what's happening now. So I can tell you these tools, being present just to the experience, to feel and have a safe person with you, is better than any physician with a computer, looking at the computer screen and not making contact with you. Right. And he has a formula. And if he doesn't follow that formula, his license is, this is danger. We run our system on not healing, but preventive measures of your own self-perfection, your self-protection. Remember, this is our nature of mind, is to self-protect. So I will lie, I will learn stealing and cheating in order to protect. What? I'm protecting my identity, my things, my material. I'm protecting this identity. And this is where we're in struggle. The ego has been unfortunately pulled in a direction that's lost the humanity of humility. We have to get vulnerable. And I want to tell you, every day, I welcome vulnerability because that's grace. Every day at my exhale breath, it's a little letting go, little letting go. Every time I exhale, let it go, let it go. Every inhale, receive the grace of life. Breathe it in, it's coming, it's beauty, it's right here. Exhale, let go of the outcome, let go, let go. This is the gift of mindfulness. And we know it from mindfulness, but many people cannot sit still. And so we have to gradually be able to learn to feel sitting still. You have to move the body first. I can change your breath by bringing your arms over your head and bringing them down. I can get more breath in the minute I bring your arms up over your head. And if it's too hard with your shoulders, you breathe where you stop your arm. You don't reach and bully for the top. You do it gradually. And when the breath stops, that's where your arm stops. And it doesn't define you as less than. It gives you grace to be present to where you are. We are too harsh on ourselves. You watch a video of yoga, I can guarantee it's dangerous. I don't do any videos because people watch it with their eyes, they'll copy, and they don't feel it. I did my yoga today, and they still hold on to that anger.
Well, and the stories I hear from people who are either friends or they're in therapy with me, and they go to yoga and they just have emotional releases on a regular basis. And we've known it for decades, even in the Western world. So do you know the work of Dr. John Sarno?
Yes.
Yeah. And do you know Diedrich Wolzak's work?
Oh, yes.
So all that kind of stuff, I would hope and imagine that the psychologists that are going to be training as yoga therapists are going to get exposure to that stuff.
Well, even the transpersonal psychologist that brought in so much of humanity in the work years ago, we need to get as much knowledge and using these tools in ways that create an environment of synergy, that we're all working together, and helping in ways we can, and not judging. They're all different ways of maybe getting to the same place, but whatever people can listen to and hear, and everybody's different. They're going to hear something from one teacher to another. They'll hear something from you that they will never hear from me. And my whole work now is trying to reach a diverse population. Look, I grew up blonde and white, try to reach diversity and bring these in. There's brilliant people in the city out of prisons, trying to bring yoga into the prisons. And they've created amazing opportunities for people to have these tools. So as many people out in the world giving safe environment and to have these emotional releases is how we're going to move forward.
Wonderful. Well, if you think about, take a breath and get centered, and if we're button up against the end of our time here, what's an aspect of your work or this interview that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to include?
Well, I'd like to include the fact that, I think there's no shame in having struggles. There's no shame in not being perfect. And the perfection idea that we've led so long to achieve, to overdo, to get the outcome, to get that result, that we forget that there is a process to living that just needs a little forgiveness. And so I think that when kids come in and we have people with all of the addictions and the self harming, and that we let go of any kind of shame. And this is the hardest part right now, because it's such a hidden place in there. And so I think the work of accepting is it's okay to cry. And so you come to a yoga class, they always say, I'm sorry. It's like, no, this is good. This is good. Tears are purifying. Laughter is purifying. Anything that gets this movement is purifying. And so I think the joy should come out of this beautiful gift that we're really moving in a direction of healing. And I feel better about things now than I ever have in the world of healing. People are open up to sound. They're open up to vibrational healing, touch. It's needed, and I'm excited for the future of this work.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance and to learn about the work you're doing there. I look forward to hearing more about how the psychologists are moving into the yoga therapy training and the range of curriculum that they get exposed to. And I appreciate, I know you have a trip coming up, so blessings on your trip.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, bringing 15 people to Portugal for a yoga retreat, and in February, I'm bringing a group to Jamaica. So if anyone's interested in the retreat in Jamaica, that's a wonderful environment. We're up in the mountains, and this plantation up in the mountains is lovely.
So again, it's Yoga Among Friends.
Yoga Among Friends. And that's how it started. When I came from California to the Midwest, thought I'd be here a couple of years. It was all about friendship, because it was safe. You have friends at yoga. among friends.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Well, it's a pleasure.
And
Thank you
it's
for
been
having
a
me
blessing.
today. Thank you. Thank you. Blessings to you. Thank you.
Laura Jane Mellencamp-Murphy is the founder and has been the owner of Yoga Among Friends in downtown Downers Grove since 1998. Prior to moving to the Midwest, Laura Jane received her master's in clinical psychology and was a marriage family therapist in Los Angeles, California. After moving to Downers Grove, she has been practicing therapy using the tools of yoga. Laura Jane has been changing people's lives as an accredited yoga therapist and yoga teacher by offering a complete range of yoga classes as well as one-on-one yoga therapy sessions. Yoga therapy is a part of a comprehensive therapeutic program intended to improve wellness from a holistic perspective. In yoga therapy, a yoga practice is designed for the individual's own needs. During these sessions, the personalized and evolving yoga practice is created with the therapist for an individual to use at home. It uses the tools of physical movement with breath techniques, sound, meditation, and self-study. Yoga therapy is an essential alternative or complementary treatment methodology to biomedical, illness-based healthcare.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.